just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself!
That's right, Bengals fans. Welcome to Inside the Jungle. Redemption at its finest. Bengals win 27-10 in New Orleans down in the Big Easy, making it look easy as they stomp the Saints and give the Saints another back-to-back home loss for the first time in quite a while down in New Orleans. But the Bengals looking good in all three phases. Glad you could join us. I'm Nick Superman, hanging out once again with the, I guess we'll call it the fearsome foursome, the three amigos. I'll start with the man with the epic mustache, Scott Mantel. Scott, I'm hearing 70s music in my head.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I keep getting funny looks at work with this baby now. Nick, I forgot to ask you how Dumb and Dumber was. I was jealous that I didn't get to it this week.
You know, I'm a huge fan of Dumb and Dumber, clearly. It was good. I laughed. It's a tough act to follow, though, Scott. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Normally those sequels are like that.
Yeah, it was still funny. I laughed quite a bit. Mickey Metzer, how you been, man? Did you have a good weekend? Did you enjoy the game?
I did enjoy the game. What was not to enjoy, Nick? Like the cloud of negativity disappeared pretty quick there on Twitter, so it was pretty awesome.
And last but not least, Anthony Cosenzo over on the left coast. How's the weather? No snow for you, right?
No, it's actually been a little chilly in the mornings, probably in the 40s, and then probably 60s, 70s in the afternoon. So the afternoon gets pretty nice. Yeah, eat your hearts out. I actually wasn't, given the week before's result, I wasn't very interested in this game going in, truth be told, and I went to my niece's soccer game, watched that for the first hour of the game, and then went back to watch the game with my brother, and it was a very pleasant surprise, so I was pretty stoked on it.
Yeah, very pleasant surprise. In fact, looking at the preseason predictions that we all gave, all four of us chalked this up to a loss. So anytime you can get a win, when all four of us kind of, and for that matter, everybody around the country thought this was going to be a loss for the Bengals, considering the way they played 10 days before that against the Browns, you'll take that any day of the week. Let's start with our best and worst. Mickey, best and worst.
Fired at me. I'm going to go best, and it's a single play, Nick, and I hope I'm not stealing any thunder, but it was when the Bengals decided to be happy with their lead before the half, hand off the ball, and Jeremy Hill breaks it 62 yards to get down with 1 second left. That was by far the best for me. And I'm going to go worst, and I'm not one to complain about refs, so I don't want to make it about that. I just thought that the two personal foul calls we got, the one on Pecco and the one where Ioka blew up Jimmy Graham, were a little iffy. Maybe the Graham one I can understand, but I honestly believe, Ioka didn't know that the ball wasn't caught. That's pretty bang-bang. When you watch it slow, you see that. But Pecco really had the runner in his grasp and just pushed him down. And to get a flag there, granted, it gave the defense the opportunity to step up and shut him down there, but I just thought those were probably the worst. I think that you got to let guys play, and those were two iffy calls.
You mentioned the name Pecco. Probably played the best game of the season for him so far this year, making plays there in the backfield of the Saints. Scott Bantel, best and worst?
Best, you're not going to hear this from me very often. Ray Malaluka. The defense just seemed better with him in there, and the play I point to would be that goal line stand where he and I believe it was Sean Williams blew up the play at the 1. So not very often you'll hear me say good things about Ray, but he made a difference. Bad, Mickey and I just are not going to agree on my boy Jermaine Gresham. The guy catches 2 balls, granted both touchdowns, got tackled in the field of play once and he fumbles, and then celebrates his recovery in the end zone. like it wasn't an idiotic play that fumbled it to begin with. So, I just the guy is he's going to end up hurting them big time in a big situation.
He made up for it by playing a real sport, soccer. I'm just kidding. Kicking the ball to himself, AC. I mean, Gresh, we all know the story about Gresh, but hey, you got the ball back and it was a touchdown, which is all that matters. Give us your best and worst.
Yeah, good choices by both the gentlemen there, and luckily they didn't really take mine, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to go along the same lines of Mickey and really point out one play. I'm going to go the 3rd and 18 in the shadow of their own end zone. Um, Andy Dalton just drops an absolute dime in the lap of A.J. Green, who beat his defender, and the safety was just a step late getting over there. Absolutely huge play. I think it was a 38-yarder, and that was when the game was getting pretty. It wasn't really close, but it was at the steps of it being uncomfortable. And if the Bengals didn't convert that play, which was basically kind of toss one up, see what happens, but it was an incredible throw, great catch in stride, and really, really, I thought was the play of the game, especially late. Worst, it's going to be a name of a person, and that person's name is Tony Williams. And for those people who don't know who Tony Williams is, that is the Saints fan who took the ball away from the female Bengals fan. Gresham flipped the ball to a young lady in the stands who was a Bengals fan, and some Saints fan, an older gentleman, decided to rip the ball away from her and give her a nice elbow in the face and wouldn't give her the ball back. So that guy really is having some bad karma coming his way, I think.
Well, it's been a couple days now. I think that situation's kind of simmered down. It's unfortunate that something like that would blow up like it did. I mean, he was going to give the ball to his grandson, but yeah, didn't look great. I'm glad the Saints.
But to elbow a woman in the face for it? I mean, I don't know. That's pretty tacky.
Yeah. Kudos to the Saints. Kudos to Jermaine Gresham for sending her a ball as well. I think that one will go down in history as not one of the finer moments in Saints history. But not all Saints fans are bad. But yeah, that didn't look great. If I had to give a best, I would say I'm going to give Andy Dalton just as a whole. I don't want to pinpoint just one play because I think he had a lot of good plays, especially the way he bounced back against after the very, 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 very poor showing against the Browns, came back and was arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL on Sunday and throughout the weekend. So kudos to Andy Dalton for that. If I had to give a worst, I think I'll agree with UAC regarding the fan. Not really too much to complain about from a Bengals perspective. I think they all did a fantastic job. Oh, if you want to nitpick, I'll say my worst is Jeremy Hill. You got to hold on to the ball. I know those 2 fumbles went out of bounds. Hold on to the ball, dude. Please hold on to the football. Those are our best and worst. I want to change gears and talk about introduce something new here on the show. It's turning points. I think there were 3 key plays in this game that turned the game, hence the name Turning Point. So I'm going to start with you, Mickey. Given the choice between these 3 turning points, Georgia Loca's hit on Jimmy Graham, the defensive goal line stand, and Andy Dalton's 3rd and 18 conversion to A.J. Green in the 4th quarter after the Saints had just scored a touchdown to kind of get back into the game. Which for you was the more important turning point in the game?
That's a tough one, Nick. I would throw a 4th in there too, but for the sake of this...
Well, which is your 4th?
Honestly, it's the Jermaine Gresham recovery in the end zone. I mean, that's a demoralizing point right there where if they lose that fumble, you just, went down and just got shut down. That could have set the tone and just spun out of control. We can talk more about that play in a minute because I want to, say some things to my buddy Scott Bantel over there. But I don't know, Nick, that it's probably the 3rd and 18, but I really think that hit on Jimmy Graham was huge. Like, Jimmy Graham's the best tight end in the NFC, I would say. And, the Bengals have a history of just forgetting about tight ends. Scott covered it a ton last week. And, even in his 5 questions to the Saints site, he talked about it. And the fact, not only that hit, but later I think it was Reggie Nelson. I think Jimmy Graham caught a ball not too long after that and did his patented flex, and Reggie ran right up in his face and shook his finger like, nope, that's all you're going to get. And he really didn't. He really was a non-factor. So I think I'm going to go there. It just showed the swagger that we had, and the Bengals weren't going to be pushed around. And I actually loved that penalty. I loved everything about that play. So I'm going to say that one.
It's a solid choice. It made an impact because you're right. Jimmy Graham after that didn't do a whole lot for the Saints. If you just look at some of his numbers here, Jimmy Graham on the day after that hit, he only had 3 catches for 29 yards. I think they did a pretty good job on him, AC. As far as the turning point goes, what's your biggest one? You kind of mentioned the Dalton conversion earlier.
Yeah, but now that you throw the other ones out, I'm going to go goal line stand. That was early. I just thought, and I don't think that anybody expected the way that this defense has been playing, that they would be able to make a play like that against a Hall of Fame quarterback like Drew Brees. I felt like that was just the moment that the Saints could have grabbed a hold of that game. The fans could have been back in it. That was just a huge momentum swing. You had to know that Sean Payton, ever the gambler, was going to go for that go for that play, especially at home. And it was kind of an unexpected play in respect to where the pass was thrown. It was thrown in the flat to a fullback that really wasn't, isn't a big offensive weapon for them. So I'm going to say the goal line stand, and Nick, you alluded to it, and I think a couple of the other guys did too, that Ray Malaluga's presence on Sunday was a big boost to that defense. They played really well.
Mickey added a fourth option in there, the Gresham fumble. Kurt in the chat room also his suggestion for a turning point was the Hill run at the end of the first half. Luckily, he was tackled with 1 second left. They got 3 more points on the board to go into the halftime locker room with a 13-3 lead. Scott Bansell. So if you had to pick, I guess, between those 5 or maybe the 3 that I originally suggested, which was your biggest impact or biggest turning point?
Man, there was a bunch to that game, and you take a look, they almost all went the Bengals' way, which led to the nice victory. Just for the sake of not doing the same, I'm going to take the green pass. I know it was late in the game, but as I'm watching that game, I'm starting to get concerned at that point. The crowd's starting to get back in it. The Saints got some points up on the board. The Bengals are deep in their territory, 3rd and 18. Be honest with yourself. No one thought they were converting that, especially not on a Dalton pass, and he threw an absolutely perfect pass. He probably won't get credit for how nice of a pass it was, but that was a gorgeous pass down the sideline, and then capped it off with the nice pass at the end of the drive for the touchdown. So, as much as we talk about Dalton, the guy can't win, he's not clutch. Boy, you couldn't have asked for 2 more clutch passes than he had on that drive. And that's what drives you nuts with Dalton is you see the way he was on Thursday, and then you see those passes on Sunday, and you just would like to see it more often.
The 3rd and 18 conversion was a big point in the game because the Saints had just scored a touchdown, and on 1st and 10, A.J. Green gets the pass interference call, backing them up. So down they're looking at 1st and 20. Got nowhere on 1st down, 1st and 2nd down. That's 3rd and 18, and that's a big throw, big time throw, because at that point, if they don't convert, they're punting the football back to the Saints, who possibly get the ball at midfield, then you never know what could happen after that. And fortunately, the big touchdown for A.J. Green there at the end. I also want to throw out after the goal line stand. I thought it was big of the Bengals that they went down the field. They went 94 yards. Now they didn't get 6, which was disappointing. But they went down the field and kicked a field goal, and they were close to scoring a touchdown. I thought that was a good response as well. Not a whole lot of possessions for the Saints in the first half. That's why they were limited to. Oh, there we go. I'm back. That's why they were limited to 3 points, Mickey.
Hey, the Saints, it was weird. Like they had these really long drives, but then they didn't really amount to much. So they were the time of possession in the first half totally was their favor. But I mean it just shows how important finishing those drives with points are. So yeah, I agree. I think it's cool. I think it's cool that we all picked a different thing. I mean, it just shows the Bengals had an incredible game. So it's pretty fun to talk about that. Whenever you're ready to talk about Gresham, Nick, I'm ready.
All right, I want to throw one more thing out there before we get to Gresham, and I want to talk about Jeremy Hill. In the absence of Gio Bernard the last couple of weeks, Hill has stepped up and he's had two 150-yard rushing games in that time. 27 carries, 152 yards. Most of that came on a large chunk, that 62-yarder there, just at the end of the first half. AC Jeremy Hill, huge impact on this offense, and I'm glad he's playing for the good guys.
Yeah, he's to that point. He's got about 350, 360 yards in the last 3 games. So that's that's pretty solid. For a rookie back getting his first 3 starts, and that's with the benching / injury that he suffered against the Browns. So if that game he got a little more carry, and I think that those yardage totals tell you maybe that the Bengals could have technically been in that Browns game maybe a little bit more if they just decided to stick with the run. One other little point I wanted to make, Nick, and then you guys could probably segue into Gresham, and I'll be hands off on that one because I always seem to rip on that guy. But I thought the defensive game plan, aside from just stopping the run, was really a really solid game plan. The secondary played very well. They kept everything in front of them. There were no deep passes. Very, very few deep attempts by Breeze, and they were overthrows or incomplete. So they kept Drew Brees had a great completion percentage on the day, but everything was in front of him. It was short passes, and they really made the Saints uncomfortable on offense, I thought.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It also helps, too, when you contain the Saints' rushing game to just 76 yards, a team that had been running the football quite well the last few weeks. And let's be fair, the Bengals defense, as far as the ground game goes, had not been very good. It gave up 170 to the Browns the week before. To bounce back the way they did was pretty big. I think, Scott, you even had a bold prediction last week that came true.
No doubt, 150 yards for Hill. Just I swung and missed on the 2 touchdowns, but I'll take credit for the 150.
It's pretty good. Big impact on this offense. With Bernard being out, looks like he may be back this weekend against the Houston Texans as well. So maybe we'll see a 2-headed monster back there in the Bengals backfield. All right, I know Mickey wants to talk about Gresh. Go for it, Mick.
I just think that the Gresham's another one of those lightning rod players, and he makes a lot of mistakes. And a few weeks ago, I went on and on about his drops or lack thereof this season. And everyone's giving him such a hard time for that play on the goal line. Yes, Gresham does need to protect the ball more, but there is no lack of effort from that guy. When the Bengals were flat against the Browns, I would argue that Gresham was one of the last people still kind of pushing out there. I love the effort, and if that's the kind of fire needed, yeah, I mean that could have been devastating, like I talked about earlier. But the guy had 3 defenders on him, and he's still reaching for that touchdown. I think on plays like that, I'm going to cut him, a little more slack than I am on the false starts or the flat out drops. But I mean, Gresham's got a little bit of what Dalton has, right? Like, people have already made their mind up about him. Either every play he makes is stupid, or he's a talent that just needs to get his head in the game. And I think the guy is an incredible athlete. I mean, the fact that he even has the ability to fight for those extra yards is huge. So that's all. I mean, that's all I want to add to that. Like, I think it's unfair. I mean, the guy had 2 touchdowns. Like, he was our offense that day. For the red zone. I think he only had 13 yards, but Gresham, that's where we were sold Gresham. He is huge in the red zone, and he showed it there. Say he was 6 inches closer to the goal line on that fumble. He crosses that line, and it's done. I mean, it's a touchdown. Who cares if they knock the ball away? I just think that that's one of those plays you're going to see with whatever glasses you put on for Gresham there anyway. That's huge heads up to keep going after the ball and recover it in the end zone. I hate that he fumbled it. I hate that he does carry the ball away from him when he fights for that, but I love this fire, and I'm never going to fault a guy for that.
Yeah, you can't argue the passion and the fire that he plays with, but if that ball's not recovered, maybe it's a different story, like Mickey said earlier, and that's why he thought it was a potential turning point in the game. Scott, you wanna add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, Mickey's right. That's fine. I like his fire, but you've got to also have some sort of semblance of where you are on the field, where you're at in the game, and play smart. I talked about it in my article this week. He's already got the first down. He's inside the 1-yard line. I agree with him fighting for the touchdown. But look, when you got 3 defenders closing on you, you can't be swinging the ball out there. And that is how Gresham constantly fumbles. Just taking a look here, in his season, or in his 5 seasons, he's got 256 catches and he's got 10 fumbles. Now, figure in 21 of those are touchdowns. How many times did he go out of bounds? How many tackled the field 150 times and he's got 10 fumbles? That doesn't account for the fumbles that have been overruled or he's been ruled down. This is a guy, remember the Baltimore game a few years ago? It was a terrible rule, but he fumbled going out of bounds because why? He put the ball down to brace himself. The playoff game last year, remember they almost lost getting a chance for a field goal because why? He put the ball down to brace himself and fumbled it again. The guy just he doesn't seem to learn from his inability to hold on to the football. He's constantly swinging around. He's going to end up killing this team some point in time.
I hear what you're saying, and yes, but here's another interesting fact. We just praised a guy for his 150 yards, yet in the past 2 games, I think he's put the ball on the ground 5 times. Granted, we only lost one of them, but Jeremy Hill's having trouble with the ball. Are we going to start calling him an idiot player and he needs to go down? I mean, and you want to critique a guy's play. That run at the end of the half was huge to get the Bengals in field goal position. But I don't guarantee, but I think the right play there was for him to keep running in the sideline, stiff arm 24, and score the touchdown. I don't know why he cut it back in. He was afraid of a smaller corner. I don't think that's a great play. It worked out in the Bengals' favor. And trust, I'm not bagging on Hill. Come on, I'm the guy that doesn't really bag on any Bengal. So I just think that people already have their mind made up about these players, and there's a couple more that are in the same boat. I think Pecco's in the same boat. I think Maluga's in the same boat. There are people that still talk about we need to get rid of Ray Maluga when look at what his return did for our run defense in one game. I just think that people have made their mind up, and that's where we're at. But just to reiterate my initial point, Jeremy Hill has put the ball on the ground 5 times in the last 2 games. We only lost the one. He put it, I don't know if it was 3 this past game or 2, but like Nick said, he gets the ball swatted, he goes out of bounds both times, no big deal. That in the middle of the field, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, and I think I fall probably in the middle of, and I lied. I said I was going to be hands off on this one, but I had a little bit of a thought. I think I fall kind of in the middle of both of you guys. Mickey, I see your points. I think that the difference between the Hill issues and Gresham issues is Gresham, that's been now 4 or 5 years that we've seen some of these things keep popping back up. You can't get more efficient than 2 catches, 2 touchdowns on a day, especially from a tight end. That's what you want in the red zone. The fumble thing, like Scott said, you have to know that you have the first down. You fall down at the 1, you get 4 more plays to punch it in and go from there. But I do like the effort, on the other hand, to reach the ball out. He was pretty close when he reached it out, so you can't really fault a guy for trying on that respect. The other issue I had with him, though, on Sunday was the other touchdown catch where he was all alone. I don't know if you guys saw this. He even bobbled that one a little bit, and he ended up bringing it in, and yes, that's a minor critique, but even that one was kind of an adventure in itself. So at some point, I don't know if it's a mental thing. I don't know if it's a attention deficit thing. I don't know, but he's got to just secure the ball on catches and when he runs with the football. Everybody knows he can catch the ball. Everybody knows he can break tackles, but at some point he's got to be a smarter football player. But overall, I think I fall in the middle of where both of you guys stand on him.
Anthony, I think you're right. It's focus. I mean, the guy just seems to lack focus. That's what do we bang on him for? False starts and holdings. Those have to do with focus. And, Mickey, you're right with Hill's fumbles. That is a problem. The issue I see, though, with Gresham is he's swinging the ball out around. It's not like he has the ball secure and he's getting a good hit on him that's knocking the ball out. I'm not going to bang on him for a fumble like that. But when the guy fumbles, it's because he's swinging the ball around and he's being careless with it. And it was a huge play that he recovered that in the end zone. But he was just careless with the ball right at the end zone where it could have been a turning point big time for the Bengals going the opposite direction if he doesn't jump on that football. So I'm off my soapbox.
he's labeled himself the villain. Fortunately, the villain was on our team Sunday. He scored 2 touchdowns on that efficiency, as AC said. I thought Gresh did, despite the fumble. Hey, I'm just glad he scored 2 touchdowns for us. It is what it is. He's gonna make great plays, and then there's gonna be the plays where you scratch your head and you go and you think to yourself, well, what the heck was he thinking? And that's just, here after 5 years of Jermaine Gresham, that's the way it's going to be. That's not going to change. Clearly, it's not going to change. I also don't know how much more of him we'll see in the future with him being a contract year. We shall see. But again, the good news is he scored 2 touchdowns for the Bengals. I believe he was the leading point getter in fantasy football from a tight end perspective. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about that, but 2 touchdowns certainly helps that. But hey, look, the Bengals win 27-10 in New Orleans, a place none of us thought they would win before the season, and they did. They went in and they won pretty handily. You take away the touchdown in the fourth quarter from the Saints, that's a 27-3 game, and I thought the defense played very well. They didn't do a whole lot of blitzing. They kept everything in front of them, and they made the tackles. They tackled well, which is something we hadn't seen them do very well in the last couple of weeks as well. All right, let's look ahead now to we'll switch gears and talk about the Texans. Before we dive into this game specifically, we did get a Twitter question this week. AC had put out a little note for questions for his mailbag this week, and we got an interesting one from Dave Wellman. And I'm going to steal that one for the show's purposes. He says, going back to the 2011 draft, would you rather pick AJ at 4 or J.J. Watt, who went 11th in that draft? I thought that was an interesting question. Now that we've had a couple years to see both players do well in this league, AC, I'll start with you since you posed the question for the fans, and this was one of the responses you got. What's your take?
I did address this briefly on the mailbag. I knew we were going to talk about this on the show because it was a great question. So props to Dave, who's a good Cincy Jungle friend, to send that out to us. But you know what? I'm actually going to stick with AJ Green, and here's why. This team was in a huge transition going into that draft, and it was mostly on offense. They didn't have a quarterback anymore because Carson Palmer wanted to retire and not be on the team anymore. They got rid of Chad Ochocinco in a trade to the Patriots, so they didn't have a quarterback and they didn't have a wide receiver. Well, the choice is at 4. As I understand it, the rumor was that Marvin Lewis and the team wanted either Von Miller or A.J. Green. A lot of people were saying, well, maybe Cam Newton, but a lot of people felt he wasn't going to drop. And then there was Blaine Gabbert floating out there, but even that was a little wishy-washy. I think the Bengals made a conscious decision to say we're going to get our quarterback at the top of the second round, and we're going to sink or swim with that player, and we're going to surround that player with as much offensive talent as we possibly can, and that would be A.J. Green, and he was deemed the safest player in the draft. So I think they said, hey, you know what, let's do what we can on offense, and you have to also remember they had a lot of young guys on the defensive line already that were very young that they were excited about. You had Carlos Dunlap coming off a pretty good rookie season. You had Geno Atkins, who was looking good in brief spurts as a rookie as well in 2010. Then you had Michael Johnson, who would be entering his third season. So I think they felt that they were pretty set on that defensive line. Mike Zimmer liked who he had on that defense, and they just really need to up that offense. Get the big weapon with that number 4 pick, and then get your quarterback in the second round. So as good as J.J. Watt is, I would have stuck with Green.
All right, Green, as far as the 4th pick in the draft back in 2011. Mickey, what say you?
Well, I liked hearing AC's description. AC looked at it from the point of, if he was back then. I mean, knowing what we know now, it is absolutely a no-brainer. I mean, J.J. Watt's the best player in football. What this guy's doing is insane. I think, if he redrafted, every team would take him. I mean, he's really one of the main reasons Houston's still competitive. But I have to agree with AC. I mean, A.J. Green at the time was the pick, and I liked, there was the debate with Julio Jones and A.J. Green, and I definitely think the Bengals went the right way there. But I don't know why, but recently I looked back at that draft, and there was there was a lot of talent in the top end of that draft. So, I mean, really, you couldn't go wrong there. But I think I would go A.J. Green again if I was in that, in that camp at that time. But like I said, knowing what I know now, man, J.J. Watt is just some kind of player. It's insane.
What about you, Scott? What would you do?
Yeah, I'm following with Mickey on this one, and it is based off of what you know now. I mean, at the time I would go A.J. Green, but boy, knowing what you know right now, I mean, no one can change a game like J.J. Watt or take it over like Watt. And the wide receiver position, as much as I love A.J. Green, it's just so overrated. I mean, take a look at the last 10 years of Super Bowl champions and find me one team that had a dominant wide receiver on a Super Bowl champion team. It's wide receivers are so dependent on the quarterback. They can be taken out of the game so easily. A defensive end, that's not the case. He can take over a game. Heck, we've seen it in the playoffs against the Bengals themselves. So, knowing what I know now, Watt, but at the time, I would have stuck with Green.
All right. Since you both picked Watt, I'm going to ask you this question. If J.J. Watt were to be a Bengal, would he be the player he is today?
Yes.
No.
I think so. I think he would. I think there's that guy pushes himself. I don't know. I'm a huge fan. I can't stand the Texans based on the 2 years the Bengals played them in the playoffs, but I cannot help myself but root for J.J. Watt, especially when he got his big contract and his first tweet is what. Or someone asked him a question, and he's like, I don't even know what rich people buy. Like, he's one of those guys that takes his lunch pail, goes to work, and wants to be the best he can. I think there's that internal motivation in that guy is why he's as good as he is.
And I said no. The one thing I think he would bring to the Bengals that they sorely need, they already had, as I mentioned, some good defensive play up front, at least up until this season, but the one thing he would bring would be fire and leadership and accountability to a team that really needs that, especially that on the defensive side of the ball. So that's one thing that I think he would bring that maybe Green does not. But I don't think he would probably be the player that he is in Houston, and that's I don't really have a true reasoning for that other than I just don't think he would be.
Yeah, and I don't know if he would have the endorsements that he has. I mean, you don't see a whole lot of Bengals getting some big-time endorsements. You think Verizon's going, hey, let's get those Bengals players signed up for these national national commercials. Hey, I don't know if J.J. Watt has the impact that he has in Houston if he comes to Cincinnati. I just don't see it. Maybe that's the uber negative Bengals fan of me that's worn on me for 30 years. But I think he's a good player, but maybe he's another Geno Atkins who goes out and does his job, but nobody knows his name.
Who doesn't know his name? Who doesn't know Geno Atkins' name?
It took how many years for people to go, oh, that Geno Atkins guy's pretty good?
A couple. They're not saying it now because he's taking a step back, but when he all over the internet, he was labeled the best defensive player in the league forever. Pro Football Focus was all over them. Like, I don't understand that thought. I mean, Geno Atkins.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, Mickey. Does your dad read Pro Football Focus? Does he know J.J. Watt? That's what I'm saying. Like, my dad's not going to know Geno Atkins just from reading a Pro Football Focus article that's saying, oh, this guy's good because his stats say so. But I know J.J. Watt because everybody talks about him.
But what is that? How does that relate to the field? I mean, that is not going to make a guy play better. Before Geno Atkins' knee injury, he was the best defensive player in the league, whether he got a Verizon contract or was on the new front page of the paper. Like, that doesn't. I hear what you're saying. Maybe he's not going to get the contracts, but J.J. Watt got the contracts because of his ability, because of the player he became. It's not vice versa. I don't understand that rationalization.
It's also part because of the character he is on the field too. I mean, he really plays up the animalistic defensive lineman and he makes huge plays like the big touchdowns and big returns and big sacks, all that stuff. But I also think part of that is the show he puts on the field as well. With that kind of gives him a little bit more attention. And I think also he is, as you mentioned, Mickey, a positive positive guy, a good guy off the field, that the NFL really wants to latch on to a guy like that to really be their media darling, especially with all of the other bad stuff going on around the league.
Yeah, and I think that they wouldn't get the attention or the contracts or the advertising deals is just a dated argument. Back in the 90s, I think that might ring true. Not in today's social media world. I mean, you take a look at Devin Still. I mean, there's a not big name in a small market on the Bengals. Look at the media attention that got. In today's world with Twitter and Facebook and all of the media outlets, if a guy's good, he's going to get the media attention. He's going to get the commercials, no matter who he plays for.
It's an interesting debate. It's an interesting what if to play and go back and you look at that draft. Like many of us have said, that draft was pretty awesome as far as the talent goes in that top half of that first round. I think the Browns probably are wishing that maybe they hadn't passed up on Julio Jones. I think we're kind of great and thankful that the Browns did, so we didn't have to face him twice a year. But it's a fun little game. What if? If I had to pick or go back, I would say I would take J.J. Watt because I think defense wins you championships. If we would have the J.J. Watt today that is playing for the Houston Texans, I think he makes a big impact. And look, now he's playing tight end for the Houston Texans. What's that tell you? Let's look ahead to Sunday's game as the Bengals take on the Fighting J.J. Watts. Mickey, you've been to Houston to see that team play. AC's laughing. What are you laughing at, AC?
The Fighting J.J. Watts. I thought that was pretty clever.
Well, I mean, let's be real. Who else? I mean, they've got Johnson at wide receiver, but he's getting older. I don't know how much of an impact he's had this year. They're starting a quarterback in Ryan Mallett, who's starting his second game in the NFL. But they are coming off a win in Cleveland against the first-place AFC North team, which is no longer. Give me your thoughts. What are your expectations? What are you most looking forward to this Sunday, Mick?
I mean, I'm looking forward to a couple things. The Bengals, kind of a revenge game against the Texans. There's salty taste there. I'm looking for the Bengals to beat up on a team that's ripe for beating up on. One thing that the Bengals are really good about, and I for whatever reason, I watched Sean Payton's press conference after the game, a couple days after the game, about the Bengals, and they talked about their lack of pressure on Dalton, and his biggest reason wasn't the line play, it was that Dalton gets the ball out so fast that, players don't have time, to get a beat on him, and I think that that's exactly what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to run the ball, and you're going to have to, run that quick pass offense to keep a player like J.J. Watt, from taking over the game. I mean, I have a sick taste in my bad feeling in my gut from, sitting in Houston and watching Dalton throw to the line, J.J. Watt knocking it up to himself and scoring that touchdown. Like that's J.J. Watt's coming out party. That game, was probably half of his highlight reel. But I don't know. I expect the Bengals to keep on rolling. I want to see them run the ball. I want to see the quick passes. And I think the Bengals are starting to get healthier, and this is, going to be the next step to securing this division.
We've seen the previous games against the Texans, AC, where Andy Dalton has had a hard time throwing balls batted down by the defensive line. How much of an emphasis do you think the O-line's making this week as far as keeping those hands down?
Yeah, that's a biggie. It sounds like Andre Smith returned to practice this week, and looks like he might go. It sounds like he's actually been pretty close the last couple of games, which is good. But I think that's a biggie. Even though the line played very well last week, especially in the running game, I think you got to have as many healthy people as possible in this game. I think it's more difficult than people assume, given that there's a quarterback getting his second career start. This is a Houston team that won 2 games last year, but I believe they're 5-5 at the moment, and they're really scrappy. They find ways to win. They're getting pretty creative, and Arian Foster, before he got injured, was running the football very well for them. So that's kind of an area of concern there. I'm curious to see what the Bengals will do, because it sounds like Giovanni Bernard might return this week as well. I'm curious to see if they're going to ride the hot hand and Jeremy Hill give him 15 to 25 carries as they've done the last few weeks, and maybe mix in Bernard and or put him out as a receiver, or if they're going to continue to feed the ball more to Bernard and see what happens there. I think however that plays out is going to be a pretty key factor as well.
How about you, Scott? What do you make of Sunday? The Texans coming off a big win in Cleveland. I thought I actually predicted in our little pick'em over the weekend that the Browns would lose, fresh off that big win over Cincinnati. I think they came back to earth against a pretty good Texans defense. What do you think about this matchup going into Sunday?
Yeah, and to be honest, take a look at the Browns' schedule. It's possible they could lose the rest of their games. They got a tough schedule left, but this Texans team concerns me. They're the type of team that can really cause the Bengals problems. Their defense is not as good as we thought it was going to be, but Watt can put that pressure on Dalton. We've seen what Arian Foster has done against this team twice in the playoffs. If he's healthy, that's an if, but if he's healthy, he's the third rusher in the NFL still, even missing a game or two. He's averaging 5.1 yards a game. If the Texans are able to run the ball and put pressure on Dalton, this is the type of game that it could be ugly. So, the Bengals have struggled down there in the past. It's going to be a big game, and I think it's going to be a tough game to win.
Scott says it's going to be a tough game to win. Let's hear what Fatal Content has to say. Welcome to the program, Fatal. How you been, bud?
Hey, what's going on, gentlemen, man? I see you guys are giving us all types of looks, man. The background king, my boy over there, Scotty, looking like a painter. And I see my boy, background king with the high top fade, too, man.
Yeah, unintentional, but yeah.
He's going Belle Biv DeVoe on us, Fatal.
Yeah. Kid, what is it? Kid and play?
Hey, man, I just want to say that, listen, man, I'm not worried about this Texans team as long as we run the freaking ball. Just run the ball. It's that simple. You negate J.J. Watt. You play to our strength, and you set up the play action. I think what we did this week just illustrates why we need to it's simple. There's no, elaborate scheme. Just run the damn ball. We win the game.
Easier said than done, though, right? I mean, this is a pretty good front that the Houston Texans, have. I mean, J.J. Watt's a beast. You got to take care of him. I know they got Brian Cushing there on the linebackers, the linebacker group as well. I mean, we've seen it. They tried running it in the past, and maybe that was because Jay Gruden was calling the plays, and they tended to avoid that rather quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. I just want to know where their run defense was ranked because we just tore up the 11th ranked run defense in the NFL at home. So I would like to know where their run defense is at. We can run all over the 11th ranked defense, and I think we can handle the Texans.
It's 16th, Nick.
They're ranked 16th. Is that on total defense or just the rush defense?
Running yards per game.
All right, so they're right in the middle. Pretty. I think they should be able to run on this team as long as they run the way they did over the weekend. Now, I would don't shy away from Hill just because Bernard's back. I mean, ride the hot hand.
Exactly. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, man. I saw a stat that the Bengals were when we rushed the ball at least 30 times, and with Andy Dalton, we're 26-3-1. Make that we're 5-0-1 this season when we run it that many times. So just when Jeremy Hill runs it at least 15 times, I believe we're 3-0. So with those numbers, you would figure that we can run on anyone if we get the volume up and we get it going. I think we can run on about anybody. It's just about knowing to force it, even though it's not looking good in the beginning. You just have to. You never know. The 62-yard run could bust loose the way it did this week.
That's right. Yeah, man, I agree. Hope they run it a lot, Fatal.
Yeah, definitely, guys. Man, I'll just leave you with this, man. I called last week, and I wanted some fortitude, man, some mental and physical fortitude from this team. And I love that Hugh Jackson called out A.J. Green and told him specifically, just be the beast you were. And A.J. took the challenge. Players like Maluga took the challenge. The defense took the challenge. And for once, our team was ready to punch somebody in the mouth, and they took on the challenge, and they look good. It's just carrying it from week to week. Hope we can do that, guys, and I think we will, man. Take it easy, man. Who dey?
All right, who dey, Fatal. We'll talk to you Sunday.
All right, fellas. Take it easy.
That's Fatal Content getting us started here on the program. Let's welcome in John from Kentucky, area code 859. John, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on? I just wanted to say about Gresham Book. My hard feelings at him are It was our second playoff game, and I just remember rolling through Pennsylvania that day, and I was excited about the Bengals. And Houston was putting pressure on Dalton, and there it was. It was like, I think, the second play of the game. Dalton fires, Gresham at the point. Oh, he dropped it. I nearly wrecked the truck. I screamed so loud. And I was like, man, that guy's about as consistent as I don't know what. And I've just had a bad taste in my mouth towards him ever since, you know. I don't know. Maybe I should forgive him, but he's not consistent. That's the only thing about him.
Well, I would say, and I have a feeling Mickey would agree with this as well, I put a lot of that blame on the offensive coordinator, Jay Gruden, for making Gresham the focal point of the game rather than A.J. Green.
Well, yeah, that's not a great offensive game plan. I would definitely have trusted A.J. before I would have Gresham.
Mickey is silent, so he must agree. Okay, go ahead, Mickey.
No. I mean, I'm curious, John, and I'm going to ask my first question pretty facetiously. What NFL team is your favorite team? Because every week you're in the chat room and you're calling in, ripping on a different player. It's Gresham, it's Dalton, it's Nugent. A couple weeks ago, you predicted Nugent would miss a bunch of kicks. Then Dalton was going to throw interceptions, lose the game. Your prediction this week so far is Gresham fumbles and we lose. Do you have a favorite player, or? I mean, I don't see the Bengals just had a huge. I would say this is a huge win against the Saints in the Superdome. They were coming off a loss. No one gave him a shot. Gresham had a pretty good game. Yeah, he had one bad fumble that he recovered himself. Then he had another Bengals touchdown, and yet you're calling in like he's the worst player on the field. I mean, I don't get it. Oh yeah, the guys are reminding me, Drake Patrick, who probably should get a Pro Bowl nod just for his gunning ability on kick returns. But I mean, I'm just curious which player you like, because the negativity that comes from you is so surprising. I mean, I know you're a huge fan. I've heard you on other call-in shows. I just don't get the negativity. They're first place, 3 losses this late in the season, and if I just listened to your calls, I would think they were back to the 4-12 years.
Well, I mean, they've just been so inconsistent. I mean, look at what they did against Indianapolis, you know, and what they did against Cleveland. Okay, we just want to see some consistency out of the team. That's why
I got some consistency.
Sunday, what are they going to do? I mean, who knows? This is like, you know, like being in a casino betting on the Bengals.
If you came at me with, you know, I mean, I can't argue. I've seen you mention a lot. The Bengals can't win in prime time, and they have trouble in the playoffs. We have totally, you know, proven that. But consistent is making the playoffs 5 out of 6 years. I would say that's consistently being in the playoffs. I mean, Andy Dalton's consistently, you know, getting this team to the next level. Does he have bad games? Absolutely. But you got to look at the whole thing. So I don't know. Like, I don't understand your negativity. I mean, and I get it. Like, you want perfection. You want players to play better. But you're comparing Gresham to Gronkowski. You're comparing Dalton to Manning. If you had a team of all the best players in the NFL, yeah, you'd probably be pretty consistently the best. But that's not the way it is. So I don't know. Like, I don't understand the negativity when this team is having such success. We all get frustrated. Trust me, I get so angry after games like the Browns game, because that's not the team that you know we're rooting for. So, you know, we expect better, but then they turn it around, and you're still just as negative the next week. So that I just question that. That's all.
Well, if they do win in prime time this year, and if they do win a playoff game, which, by the way, they haven't done a playoff game in 24 years, that is a long time not to win a playoff game. I mean, and maybe I'm the epitome of a lot of Bengals fans. I mean, we've got to see some consistency here. That's all I'm trying to say.
I mean, you're calling out Gresham. Right. I mean, he wasn't here for 24 years.
John, I love the passion. He brings it every week. I mean, you can't deny that, Mick. He's a passionate fan. I think just the way this organization has played, and you know, it's been how many years since we won a playoff game? I think it's all wearing on us. We want to see them succeed. That's all.
Agreed. And I agree, Nick. And I'm just trying to funnel John's energy into the correct path. He can't be that upset all the time.
No, look, and we're all guilty of it. I know I've complained a bit about certain players over the last couple of weeks. But in the end, hey, look, they won. They went to New Orleans. They beat a team we didn't think they could beat. And now they've got to go to Houston and knock off a team that they have had struggles with the last couple of years. So I'll start with you, Scott Bantel. Keys to victory for the Bengals against the Texans.
I don't know if it was Anthony that hit on it before. Actually, it was Fatal. It is going to be run the football. I think you look at the difference between Andy Dalton when he does have a running game and when he doesn't. It's probably not just Andy Dalton. Most quarterbacks, when you got a good running game, it helps the quarterback. But I think it's going to be running the football, controlling the game, controlling the clock. And, the Bengals, when Jeremy Hill runs the ball 10-plus times, the Bengals are 4-1. They're 2-2-1 when he carries the ball less than 10 times. So, I think even if Gio's healthy, getting 15 to 20 touches to Hill is still going to be very important in this game.
How about you, Mickey? Your keys to victory against the Texans?
I honestly, I stop the run and no, stupid turnovers, right? So, that's pretty simple. I there's 100 things that you don't want Dalton to have a 2.0 quarterback rating. I just think you stop the run and no stupid mistakes, and you're going to take this game. This is one of those games where they say you win the ones you're supposed to. This is probably one they're supposed to.
But yet they struggle against the Texans, AC. We know the story in the postseason the last couple of years. Turnovers, as the guys have said, can't be turning the football over against this team. You give Ryan Mallett and this offense extra chances to score touchdowns.
Yeah, my key, and what do we know about Andy Dalton is that he's streaky. And from basically the Indianapolis game up into the Cleveland game, he had 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions by my count. And then last week, and that's over about 4 weeks right there. Last week he had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. So I think the key is Andy Dalton, if he did ignite his positive streak right now with last week's game, gain a little confidence that he goes on this tear that he usually goes on 3 to 4 games either way in a row, either bad performances or good performances. So I'm hopeful that this last week against the Saints kind of kicks off another positive performance, because he's not going to be able to turn the ball over against that defense and on the road. So I want to see Andy Dalton carry that momentum from last week and kick off a good streak as we've seen him do in the past.
Speaking of streaks, let's see if Scott Bantel can continue his.
Hey, ladies, quit your babbling, because now's the time in the show when all the boys pull out their cojones and make bold predictions.
Scott's bold prediction came true last week. So start us off this week, Scott. Give us something bold for Houston.
Andy Dalton's got a pretty bad run going on down in Houston, but I think it changes this week. I think the run game is key, but I'm going to say Dalton hits the old 4 touchdown mark, the golden sombrero of touchdowns.
Starting us off good. I like it. Mickey, you were fist pumping there. I see that you tend to agree with that one.
I don't know if I agree. I'd be pretty pumped if that happened, right, Nick? Mine's different. Mine involves Dalton, but I think, the Texans line is pretty tough. You got Watt, you got Clowney. I'm going to go on a limb and say 0 sacks for the Texans.
That's a good one. And then they are fierce. They're a fierce bunch. Clowney, it's a name we haven't even really mentioned a whole lot on this program, coming back from his injury. Give us something bold, AC.
All right, I'm going huge. I'm going to say that J.J. Watt is either wholly or largely off of the stat sheet. I'm going to say 0 to 3 tackles. I'm going to say he causes no turnovers and no sacks, and he does not score a touchdown on offense. So he's going to have a very vanilla, pedestrian game.
All right. Some of the bold predictions here in the chat room. Fatal Content says we pick Mallet off 4 times. That would be nice. Kurt Campbell in the chat room. Dalton with 4 touchdowns and 350 yards. One of them is a rushing touchdown. So he's predicting a bold day or a good day, just like Scotty is. Pale in the chat room. My bold prediction: if Sanu doesn't have a big game this week, since he's been quiet for a couple of weeks, John will be dogging on Sanu next Wednesday night. Oh, that's funny. Pale, here. I love you, John. I love that you call in every week, man. I really appreciate it. Doc Ox. Hugh surprises me, shows intelligence, and actually runs Hill enough to get him another 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and another Icky shuffle. That would be nice. That would be real nice. Michael Creedon, pick 6 for Denard. Bengals win 31-20. So those are some of the bold predictions here tonight in the chat room. Give me a score prediction, Anthony Cosenza.
I don't like this game in general. As I said earlier, I think it's a scrappy Houston team, but I cannot pick against the Bengals 2 weeks in a row because I think I'll get the torches and pitchforks out against me there. So I will say 20-14 Bengals.
All right. He's saying 20-14. By the way, I'm looking back at the preseason predictions. We all predicted this as a win for the Bengals. So AC says 20-14 for the good guys. Mickey, lay it on us.
That's funny. My prediction is very close to AC's. I just don't think. I mean, I think we're going to see a little bit different play from the quarterback this week. I think the second week's always a little rough for guys to take over the job. So I'm going 20-12. I don't think the Texans find the end zone. I think they do a bunch of kicking. So I'm going Bengals 2012.
Lenny Rolson in the chat room, his bold prediction: 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers. Scott Mantel, that'd be nice, and that'd be right up the alley of your bold prediction.
Yeah, and I see that Chase just stole my prediction. I'm going to stick with my preseason Bengals win. I'm not quite as confident right now, but I'll go big, 31-17, and here's why. The Texans' pass defense is 31st in the NFL. I think Andy Dalton takes advantage of it, does what he didn't do in the playoffs, and throws some touchdowns.
I like it, 31-17, a nice 14-point score line or difference between the two teams. I like that you threw us that stat about the Texans being ranked 31st in the NFL in pass defense. And so you go along with the lines with Mickey saying no sacks for the Texans. If that happens, I think Andy Dalton lights up the Texans and does get that 4-touchdown day. I'll say Bengals win 35, which is really high. I'll go 35-24. Bengals win in Houston. It's a high-scoring affair. I just think that right now Andy Dalton, I think we're starting to see the beginning points of that hot streak that he tends to get on, where he goes a month in the season where he lights out. I think this is the start. That game in New Orleans. Now he's going indoors, back home. Let's remember that's back home for him to take on the Texans and kind of get rid of the playoff history against this team. Let's see him win one and get on the good side of the scoreline for once there in Houston. It's too bad it's not for a playoff win, but we'll take it here in the regular season, especially with all the teams here in the AFC North bunched up as much as they are. Appreciate everybody calling in. I apologize. We're running late on time. We didn't get to everybody's calls, so I do apologize. Make sure you call in on Sunday for our post-game show and have your thoughts heard then, hopefully after a Bengals win. Before we get out of here, we always have to give out our shout-outs. We'll start with you, my man Anthony Cosenza there on the left. Give us your shout-outs.
I've got a few quick ones. One is to Rebecca Toback, who is a Cincy Jungle editor. She looks over pieces and makes corrections and edits and stuff, and she does a great job. And I found out, and emailing her this week, that last week was the first time she tuned into the show live. So shout out to Rebecca Toback. She does awesome work for us. And Rebecca, if you are listening, please look over my piece that's set to go tomorrow. And I've got one. His name is Dane Burns. He actually has a Twitter handle that says @It'sABlackGuy. He's a Steelers fan, and he runs a blog, and he sent out to a lot of Bengals bloggers a piece he put up about the Bengals. And then one more, I wish he or she would have called in tonight, but Chili Dog. Chili Dog is a reader and commenter on the Cincy Jungle blogs, and very entertaining, and I wish that they would call in at some point. So those are my three.
Good shout-outs, AC. Mickey, how about you? Give us a shout-out this week.
Mine are longtime guys, right? So my first one's going to be Frank Leonard, DJ Elusive 45. I know you know that guy, Nick.
Mhm.
Huge on Twitter. He loves our stuff. Chatting with him a little bit. I didn't realize he was a Bay Area guy, but that makes him even cooler. So shout out to him. The other one I think is in the chat room, Brett Bradford, always pumping our stuff out there. I like to see what he writes, but I mean, some of it's tough to get someone's full thoughts in 140 characters, but I like reading what Mr. Bradford puts out there. So I'm gonna shout those guys out.
Solid. Brett's a big supporter of the podcast. Thank you, Brett. How about you, Scott?
AC stole my shout out. Not often it's a Pittsburgh fan that gets the shout out, but had It's a Black Guy tweet me today the article he wrote about the Bengals history. It was a really well written piece. It was accurate. It was not just a Pittsburgh guy banging on the Bengals. He went through the whole gamut, and for the most part, with the exception of his take on Dalton, I agree with most of what he had to say. It was a very good article. Check it out. It's on I think Blitzburg sports blog. It's about the Bengals in purgatory. And then I'll also give a shout out to Rebecca as well, like Anthony did. She does great work editing my pieces and keeping me in line.
Solid shout-outs. I'm going to go international like I always do here on the program. Jamie Rowe, W-R-O-E, he's a Bengals fan over in Manchester. He's a follower on Twitter, and he's a big Bengals fan. You can give him a follow at TreyCourtBista. That's not confusing at all. Give him a follow. He wanted a shout-out. So there's your shout-out. I'm also going to shout out everybody who tunes in live, and appreciate everybody who joins us when we do these shows every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. I'm sorry we didn't get to some of your calls tonight. We ran out of time, but we'll definitely call in on Sunday. Just a little update, a little news about this show. We will be moving next week's recording night to Tuesday night. So don't forget, Anthony, Tuesday night, we are recording Inside the Jungle at 8 o'clock Eastern right here at CincyJungle.com because I will be traveling. Scott's going to have family over Wednesday night. So we want to get everybody here on the program, and we want you here tuning in live 8 o'clock Eastern right here at CincyJungle.com. I'm just busting your balls, AC.
It was deserved. It was deserved. I did have a little bit of a brain fart one week, so yes, I will make multiple reminders in my phone and my calendar to make sure that I am here for that.
It's all good. Appreciate you for joining me this week. Mickey as well. Thank you for all you do for the podcast.
Oh man, Nick, the show doesn't run without you. Thanks.
And Scotty B with the epic mustache. We get you one more week with that thing.
Yeah, I think next week it should have its own screenshot, maybe its own handle at the bottom.
I want somebody to start the Twitter handle Scott Bantel's mustache.
It's probably going to be done now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for all you do for the show and for Cincy Jungle as well. If you want to get in touch, you can always email me insidethejungle@spnt.tv. Subscribe to the show. That way you won't miss a single episode. If you miss our live broadcast, if you subscribe to the podcast, whether it be the podcast app on iOS, Stitcher Smart Radio, Pocket Casts is a program or app that I use for my phone. Subscribe to the podcast. You won't miss a single episode. You won't miss all of the hijinks that we offer up here on Inside the Jungle. Subscribe, and you won't miss a single minute of the program. Don't forget, Inside the Jungle is a listener-supported show. If you want to contribute to our Patreon campaign, if you're a fan and you like what we do here on this podcast every week, your support is very much appreciated. You can log on to spnt.tv/Patreon. You can contribute 50 cents, a quarter, as little, as whatever you feel that you need to support, and we appreciate everything that you do for the show. We love doing this show for you fans out there. As much as we give John grief tonight, we love that he calls in each and every week, and we love the passion. And it's not just from John. Everybody who tunes in and downloads this podcast, we're all Bengals fans at heart. We want to see them win, And hopefully we will see that on Sunday. Make sure you join me for Inside the Jungle postgame immediately following the game on Sunday against the Texans right here at cincyjungle.com. That's going to do it. Episode 172 is in the can. Special thanks to our associate producers, Andy Lanham, Larry Rolston, and Mike Barton. Inside the Jungle is an SPNT production. For more information about our podcast, log on to spnt.tv. And check out all the news, all the latest updates on all the Bengals at cincyjungle.com. Gracie, Nick, and Scott will see you Sunday. Hooray!